Got it. Are you recording it, Gigi?
Yeah, I just started.
Cool. Can you send it to me too
Yeah.
afterwards?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, totally. Okay, cool. Yeah, and we can get started and let's do another minute to see if anyone else is coming in.
Got it.
Okay, cool.
I'm guessing everybody else here is a member.
Um, Wait, what?
I'm assuming all these other people are just the other students.
Yeah, so this is the club. Right now we have 28 people in the meeting.
Shoot, okay.
And yeah, pretty much all of us, unless I'm generalizing, are pre-PA. So
Well,
so
I mean,
yeah.
I was part of the same club back in my day. So
Yep, totally. Well, yeah, whenever you're ready, you can just go ahead.
introduce myself. Sure. Can everybody hear me? I'm guessing, right? Hopefully, everybody can hear me. Cool. So hello, everybody. My name is Neil. Um, I recently got into PA school. So if I can do it, all y'all can do it. Trust me. But a little bit about me. Baxter is I'm a Tucson native. Grew up here. Went to the U of A. I graduated in 2019 with a double major in public health and biochem. And yeah, pretty much about me, about my journey was, once I graduated, I decided to look for getting a lot of direct patient care hours. One thing I would advise you guys to do is if you can start early when it comes to getting patient care hours, because trust me, you'll thank yourself later on, um, because you had more time. So once I graduated, I pretty much started looking at positions locally to kind of gain that patient care kind of experience log. So I did a variety of different things. I worked in the emergency room as a scribe, so that was really cool. It really opened my eyes to a lot of disease processes, a lot about like how inpatient the hospital works, stuff like that. I also got to interact with a ton of PAs that work in the emergency room where I was located at. And I also worked in physical therapy a little bit as a PT tech, get to do a little bit more hands on than you would as a scribe. So that was more quality hours, I would say. And I worked in ophthalmology for a bit. That was cool learning about the eyes, assisted in surgery, stuff like that. And then worked a little bit in pain management, and then ended up here at Spark. And here I currently reside until I leave. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Um, yeah. Anything I missed, Gigi? Anything you wanted me
Yeah, do you want to talk about your process of getting into PA school? Kind of like the whole timeline, interviews, personal statement, like that whole thing?
cool. Yeah. So it took me two attempts to get in. Okay. So don't be disheartened if you get rejected through all your programs or every school you apply to your first time, because it is a really competitive field. I think statistically it's more competitive than medical school, given the class sizes for PA schools are a lot smaller, given the fact that the curriculum is a lot more rigorous and a lot more intensive. Um, and from the orientations I've had from my programs, they literally tell you like you're drinking. Imagine like learning the information like you're kind of drinking out of a fire hydrant, like, and the information comes at you really quickly. So the first 2 years of medical school, that didactic portion is pretty much the first year of PA school. So it's very fast, is what they've told me. So about the process, I started like I opened up my CASPA and everything. I want to say um, end of junior year, early senior year, I was kind of like tinkering with Casper. I didn't know what Casper was at the time. I mean, I heard about it, but I never had an account. So I decided to kind of like make an account, see how it works, stuff like that. Um, I fully did not expect to get even interviews in my first application cycle, just because I just wanted to see what the application, how the process was. I was pretty much dipping my toes into that process, trying to see, okay, when I am ready, I'll be a little bit more well informed. That way I can expedite everything I need to. So I started making my Caspa account, started to add like, basic stuff that I knew, like basic demographics. Obviously I couldn't upload like transcripts and stuff like that because I was still an undergrad. All my transcripts are still pending. But just trying to get a idea of a layout, how to upload stuff like that. And after I graduated, I took a year off just to get clinical experience, stuff like that. So I didn't um, work on that application then in that moment. I was just pretty much busy getting my clinical experience that I needed to apply to the schools that I had in mind to apply to. So when I first started to actually get serious, but like, all right, now it's gonna be time to apply. I have enough hours. Um, One thing you guys should know is that CASPA opens up in April every year, like I think the end of April every year. And a few weeks leading up to that start day, CASPA shuts down. Like you can't add anything, you can't look at anything. They like shut it down for like I think a few days just to get everything set. So when they open it up for the next application cycle. So one thing I learned the hard way when I was making my first account was that if it's not your transcripts, and if it's not your transcripts, then like everything gets erased. So, uh, and I accidentally made a brand new application. I didn't like transfer anything over because the first time I was making it, I was just kind of like looking where everything was. I wasn't really putting like a lot of thought into it. I was just looking at how it was looking. So I decided rather than having that crossover and accidentally when I do submit it have like some like faulty stuff in front of like admissions board, I was like, I'll just gonna start from scratch. But at that point, I realized that I had my entire personal statement on my old account, so I had to remake that. So that sucks. So piece of advice would be that anything you put on CASPA, make sure you like save it to like a Google Drive or something, just in case. Just in case, you never know. It never hurts either. Um, so when CASPA opened up, at that point I graduated, so I had my transcripts and everything ready. So I through CASPA you could request transcripts. So I just requested transcript from the U of A, from Pima Community College that I was taking classes at the time, getting that situated. And while that was going on, I spent the 2 to 3 months leading up to CASPA opening up to kind of work on my personal statement. Personal statement is a really big thing, I would say, to really help. First and foremost, from what I've heard from like people on the admissions committee and stuff like that, is that GPA plays a big role, unfortunately. But it's not saying that's the biggest, that's the only thing that they look at. But your personal statement really kind of humanizes you, makes you stand out, because at that point they're reading, who knows, thousands of applications, and if they keep reading the same thing over and over again, at some point they're going to get burnt out. So, having a really unique personal statement, something very, honest, something very catching is really important. So that's what I spent most of my time trying to do, is come up with ideas, trying to recall all the stories from all my past experiences, trying to figure out what would be like a really good story to kind of incorporate and talk about. So yeah, working on my personal statement took me at least 2 months of multiple rough drafts, and having friends and family read my personal statement, giving me their 2 cents, and kind of adjusting as necessary. Because you have 5,000 characters for CASPA for the personal statement, so you can't go above that. So 5,000 characters, for some people might seem a lot, some people might not seem a lot. So at that point, you have to really like pick and choose how you go about structuring your personal statement. So really making sure that what you want to have come across gets across in those characters. So I would say personally, for me, my biggest holdup was my personal statement, because it's a weird thing to kind of like, you have 5,000 characters to talk about why do you want to be PA. Some people could do it. Some people probably do a lot easier than I did, but it just takes a lot of kind of practice and a lot of revisions for sure. So definitely, if I was you, I would try to have like a Google Doc or something like that. And I would, like, every time like you have a really cool or memorable like patient care experience, something that's like pretty remarkable, something that really motivated you, something like that, I would try to like keep like spark notes, something like that, just so that you have a reference on like potential things you could talk about during your sit down moments when you're studying, or when you're not studying, but when you're trying to come up with ideas on where you're going to talk about for your personal statement, for sure. But once I finished my personal statement and I uploaded it, at that point, my transcripts already came in. Usually, if you're really early with asking for transcripts and stuff like that, and getting it finalized, they'll finalize your CASPA account really quickly. So one piece of advice, another piece of advice I'd give you guys is to apply early. Try to get all your stuff into CASPA as soon as possible, because not every program, some programs are rolling admissions, while some aren't. So if they are rolling admissions, the better, uh, the likelihood of you getting your application in earlier gives you a better shot, because you don't have to be perfect. Like if you're not a perfect student, like if you don't have 4.0, you didn't like cure cancer or whatever, and you submit your application before somebody that is a perfect student gets their application received, the chances of you getting an interview are probably hard, because they can't compare you with other students. So try to get your stuff in early would be a big takeaway, I would say. And through, I don't know, probably a lot of you guys are probably like juniors or seniors, maybe. You guys are probably dabbled on CASP a little bit, so you probably know that like you could pick and choose what schools you want to add. So when you add your schools, you got to be careful. Some schools have additional prompts. So those schools could ask you, one prompt that I remember for a school that I applied to was, and I only had 500 words, not characters, to describe like what learning method works best for you. Really kind of a weird question. But for questions like that, I would highly suggest that you read up more about the program, the school, because not every PA program is taught the same way. Some are more collaborative, while others are a little asynchronous. So sometimes those questions are geared towards figuring out if the applicant, which is you that applied to that school, has actually done your research, read up on the program. That way you could tailor your questions towards what they're probably looking for, based on their the way they taught their curriculum. And then once you get, obviously once you get all those, supplemental questions on CASPA done, and then you could submit your CASPA application. But one thing that I should probably touch up on is when you ask for letters of rec, you need three, at least three for sure, to have your application verified. You have to have 3 letters of rec. You can have up to 5, but you need 3 uploaded to get your application verified, so that the CASPA, whoever does grade calculations, whatever, can give you your actual like science GPA, your cumulative GPA, all those cool values for GPAs and stuff like that. One thing I will do is give the people that you want to write your letter of rec ample time. As somebody that not only has asked people for letters, but has also been asked to write letters, I really appreciate those that ask me for letters to give me like 3 months of notice, and then like at least like give me a reminder email like once a month, something like that, because we can kind of get busy. And I really like that, and it make sure that I don't forget. So if you have people in mind, make sure you give them ample time. 3 months might be a little too much for some people. A month, no less. If you ask somebody for a letter of rec for less than 2 weeks, like good luck. At least a month, I would say, would be a good time frame for sure. And then another thing about letters of rec is always get them from people that you actually have good rapport with. Don't just like, if you took a class, let's say you need one from, a lot of schools require one from a professor or some sort of teacher. If you aren't very memorable for that professor, they're going to write you, they probably have a template. I'm going to be honest with you. Some of these professors have templates that they write for letters of rec, and they're very apersonal. They're very simplistic. They're very cookie cutter, and for some people that might be that's more than enough, but for other people it probably helps to have a more personal letter of rec. So find that one professor, find that one science teacher that you really like, that you're doing really good in the class with, and then obviously go to their office hours, really make sure that they remember you, because once you ask for that letter of rec, and if they remember you, then they'll be able to personalize your letter a little bit better than other people probably. And another thing about that is you could also ask them like, hey, I could write the letter myself, send it over, you read it through, make the adjustments, bada bing, bada boom, put your signature, good to go. So you got 2 options there. And if you're in a hurry, let's say you only have a week or 2, I would say probably write the letter yourself and send it over and see, that could work potentially. So there's that little caveat there. But yeah, once those 3 letters are in, go ahead and submit. Um, Out of the three letters, you definitely, I think I touched upon it. You need one from a professor. You need one from at least, you probably really should get one from a PA at least that you shadow. If you haven't shadowed a PA and you're trying to PA school, that's a little weird in my opinion because you don't really know what PAs do until you like actually shadow one, ask them about their profession, stuff like that. So shadowing a PA and getting a letter of rec from a PA is very important. Personally, for me and some of my upcoming classmates have told me that, like, yeah, shadowing a bunch of different PAs and different specialties really helped them nail down and really motivate them to be like, all right, this is exactly what I want if there was any doubt in their mind. And the third one, I think it'd be from anywhere. It could be another professor. It could be like a work supervisor if you have a job, if you volunteer, maybe somebody from a volunteer organization, something like that. So at least three. Um, from what I've heard, you don't want to have five letters of rec is from what I heard actually, which is kind of crazy. Apparently, at that the reasoning behind that, from what I've heard, is you want uh, quality over quantity, pretty much. So if you have really good three letters of rec, like you don't need those five. But for some people, if you have like clubs, like a fourth one could be like a club or something like that, which is reasonable. But for me, I only had three. I only had three letters of rec. Both times I applied to because I had really strong letters of rec. So I didn't need to add, to cushion my application with the other two. But yeah, so once I got your letters of rec, so the big things are transcripts, letters of rec, and your personal statement. That's pretty much those big three that you have to get done as soon as possible, and then you'll be good to submit. Gotcha. I know I talked on it quite a bit.
No, yeah, thank you, Neil. Does anyone have any questions about any of that information before we move on to like the next topic? You can like put it in the chat or just ask aloud. Either way.
I know there's like a hand, like you can put your hand up.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, way too. I had
Yeah.
a few interviews that had us do that, so yeah.
Tell me about your interview process. What was that like?
That's cool. So for me, since COVID happened, schools have been doing both in person and on through Zoom interviews. So for me, I remember when I got my first interview invite with her school in Chicago. It was in person, so they told me like, after going through application, they like to schedule you for an interview. And then so what happens is they usually have some sort of link. You click the link and then they take you to like their like school, university like site. And they'll for me, what it was just like a map, and then they told me like a calendar, and they're like, these are the available dates, and the dates that were highlighted. You can go and select that date, and then it gives you two time frames. So you select it, you get it verified. Once you confirm your date, they send you a follow up and tell you, all right, this is exactly what the layout of that interview is going to be like. So for the one in for the school in Chicago, my very first interview during my first cycle, it was kind of crazy. I didn't prep for it too well. I'm gonna be honest with you, but they told me, yeah, obviously, well dressed guys. That's a suit. Girls probably like a pantsuit for you guys. Something very professional, I would say. Yeah, showed up. We showed up at 7 a.m. I believe 7 a.m. They give you a map of where to go. It's pretty much laid out for you. When I got there, it was pretty easy to navigate where to go. For me, in-person interviews would usually start off with either a tour of the campus or their facility, or like kind of a quick like a little summary of their program. Like they'll kind of, so for us, they had all the applicants that were there that day sit down like a giant conference hall, and they had like a projector up, and they were just talking about the school, the program, all the cool things about it. Which kind of weird because like, not everybody there is to get in, so they're gonna give us all these cool things and not everybody's gonna get in. But yeah, they pretty much broke up how the rest of the day was going to be, because these interviews usually take the whole day. It's pretty much like a 9 to 5. Pretty much, you do the interview portions, and then you have like a couple of breaks, and then you have like more, one-on-ones with some faculty and some other current students, stuff like that. So based on how they break up their interviews, some interviews are MMI. So you have like, you go to the different multiple rooms with different prompts. You answer them the best you can with different members of the faculty. And then you just like rotate clockwards to like different rooms. until you guys are all done, and then you have Q&As. And then sometimes you have like one-on-ones with directors, and where it's like a 15-minute one-on-one interview, and then that person just asks you a bunch of questions. It's pretty much a back and forth. But one thing I would say when you do in-person interviews is really come off personable. You really want to be kind of funny. It's pretty much a conversation. You don't, obviously you're going to be nervous. Everybody's nervous, but you really want to try to not come off as being nervous. Just think of it as like, trying to be buddies kind of, you're trying to try to share some, if there's any similarities, best to bring those up, really make you more memorable in their eyes. Stuff like that. So after the interview portions are done, or like the meat of those interview days are done, there'll probably be like a post interview, like lunch or something like that, where they have foods provided for you, and then might have like current students to pop in near the end. That way you can kind of ask them one-on-one, like, tell me a little bit more about how you think this first year is going. Like, tell me a little bit more about like what it feels like to be a student, stuff like that. So it's pretty much what I've noticed for all the interviews that I've had in person. But for online's a little bit different. Obviously, you're supposed to be well dressed as you should be. Make sure for online that you triple check your equipment. You definitely don't want to show up late or have anything kind of critically wrong go with your laptop or your device or whatever. And if you are doing it via Zoom, you always want to make sure that you're in a room that's very quiet. If you have roommates, kick them out. If you got a nosy cat, kick it out. You really want to be left alone. You want to be in a room that doesn't have a lot of pictures and stuff. Like you see here, there's pictures. You want to be very you want to take those pictures off the wall. You want to make sure that the person that's interviewing you isn't getting distracted with stuff around you. You want to make sure that, so if it's a bedroom, if you have stuff hanging, take it down or put something over it. If your room's messy, clean it up a little bit. You want to come off very professional. So you definitely want to make sure that what they see on the screen is pretty like professional, not a lot of junk, stuff like that. And if you are interviewing at schools located on different coasts, like West Coast, East Coast, make sure you know the time zone. Sometimes, like for me, this cycle, I had an interview with a school, or last cycle, I should say, I had an interview with a school in Buffalo. So it was Buffalo time. So for me in Arizona, I had to wake up at 3 a.m. to hop on that interview. So make sure you triple check the time zone if you're applying to programs on different parts in the US. So yeah. And I forgot what I'm talking about. So it's so the Zoom, it's pretty much, so what I had was a one-on-one. So it was me and the program director, like me and Gigi right now, just talking back and forth, just like this. She asked questions, I respond. That was pretty much it for 15 minutes. After that, there's a breakout room where all the other applicants show up, and you can talk to all the applicants. And then at the end, they just had like a little quick PowerPoint about their program, stuff like that. So that's how the online virtual interviews went.
What kind of questions did they ask you in the interview?
Very good question. So every program is different. Not every program asks the exact same questions. I'm sure like if you guys do if you Google stuff, you could probably, you probably look up top 50 PA school questions. The likelihood of one of them popping up is probably going to be high. It usually depends. Some programs for their interviews, they do like group scenarios as well. From what I've heard, I did have a group scenario for one school a while back. But they usually ask you some basic questions on usually the good one that most programs are probably going to ask. They might not ask, but it's really good to know is, why do you want to be a PA? I feel like you should have that question, like you should have that response down to a T, because that's what you want to do. So you want to make sure that you fully know why you want to be a PA. That's usually I've been asked that multiple times through some of the schools I interviewed at. Other questions can vary from more critical thinking based to more ethical based, to more just random, not trick questions, but more just best way to describe it is random. One program asked me if I could be any candy bar, what would I be and why? So that was a weird question. Another program asked me, this was an MMI question I had not too long ago, was it said, clearly I have reservations on something, please sell me on whatever. So once you go in the room, you're pretty much, your job is to be a salesman. I was talking to other applicants. They were they had a pen in their pocket. They're trying to sell a pen to the person that they were interviewing. Some people tried to sell a car, or like other people told me like why they should get into Pilates or something like that. So, it's very open ended. Those questions are more like critical thinking based, and how you could form an argument, how you could form your thoughts, and how you can kind of, elaborate on those thoughts and kind of gauge the person. If this is not working, then maybe switch to this, stuff like that. Ethical questions are a big thing that they throw out. Obviously, as a healthcare provider, making sure that patient autonomy is pretty well kept. You want to make sure that you're doing what's right for the patient. They'll ask you some scenario based questions, which one program asked me was, this was an MMI question, so I had 7 minutes to answer it, but the question was, you have to give a terminal briefing to a patient that has stage 4 breast cancer. How would you go about that? How would you go about that situation? So yeah, that was a question I had. Obviously, that's a very loaded question, so you want to really touch up on all the parts. You want to make sure that you know you want to come off very humble. You want to not really, obviously you don't do it over the phone. That's the first thing I told him. Like, personally, I want to do this one-on-one. I don't want to do this on the phone. You really want to, given the gravity of the situation, you want to come off very empathetic. You want to make sure that, if they have a spouse, their spouse is with them. If they have children, their children are with them as a emotional crutch. Because obviously there's gonna be some, pretty unfortunate, tragic news. And kind of like thinking, they're very open-ended. There's no right answer. They just want to know how you would go about it. Like, obviously you could talk about, like, if they're religious, you could have like a priest, or have that aspect show up. And you could even ask them, like, hey, maybe if they want a second what's it called, what's the word I'm looking for, another person kind of review, and a second opinion, that's what we're looking for, a second opinion. That's an option. Always making sure that you have the right person's information in front of you. You don't want to give the wrong person's information, stuff like that. So they're very open-ended, so you can pretty much say anything you want, as long as it's coherent and it makes sense. So there's a lot of these questions, there's really no right answer. They just want to see how well you form your reasons. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. We have a question in the chat. It says, in your interview, did you get questions about bringing diversity to the profession? I feel like I've seen a lot of that online.
Yeah. Yep, that was one that I didn't remember about until I saw that question. So they really talk about the importance of diversity, and how you would fit into their program, or like how I would bring diversity to their future cohort, stuff like that. So when it comes to diversity, don't get it twisted to think that if you're not white, then like obviously you could bring cultural diversity if you're a different ethnicity, stuff like that. But when it comes to diversity, think of, like, if you have a lot of various healthcare experiences, talk about the diversity in your healthcare experiences. Talk about all the cool things you learn from different different things. If you're a scribe, if you worked as an MA somewhere, talk about all those diverse experiences and what you've learned through those experiences, and what you could bring to your future peers and to the program with that insight that you gain, pretty much. So yeah, good question.
Yeah, thank you. I don't see any more in the chat, but do you have any other memorable questions that you were asked?
I think somebody responded to.
Oh yeah, it says, would talking about a second language we're working on be helpful as far as diversity?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you kind of want to sell yourself. Let's say, as a PA, if you knew ASL, let's say you had a patient that was mute, and you knew ASL. That's very helpful. That way you build, you're building that patient provider relationship. Obviously, if you do ASL, or if you know ASL, you're going to build a stronger bond with that patient. And with a stronger bond with patients, you have better trust between patient and provider. And then that just in and of itself leads to like a better relationship. And it helps the patient because they're more honest with you. That way they're not going to potentially hide anything. If they, no patient probably ever should, but some patients are a little bit more hesitant. But if you come off very friendly, if you come off more in this, I don't know if it's not cultural competency because it's ASL, but being aware of, like, you'll be treating patients with various different backgrounds. Some people are mute, other people can't, hear, other, stuff like that. So it's really important to know that, you'll be able to treat patients no matter any barriers, physical, mental, anything like that.
Totally. Awesome. Thank you. Our next question is, how many hours did you accumulate when you applied to the first and the second cycle?
First cycle, I had, I think, a little over 1,000 hours. Second cycle, I had close towards, I think 2,400, 2,400, something like that. So quite a bit for sure. But I also had volunteering experience, shadowing experience, and then research as well. So all those add up as well in separate categories, but numbers are numbers. They add up.
How did you decide which programs to apply to and how many did you apply to?
Oh shoot, that's a good question. So for me, the first cycle, I just applied to all the programs I met the requirements for. By no means was I a perfect student. I did not have a 4.0, but I did not have like a 3.0 either. Like I was pretty much like average. So I looked at programs. Every school is different. Some schools have minimum requirements. So some schools you have to have at least a certain GPA to apply. Otherwise, they're just going to throw your application out. You could apply, but they have filters to catch your GPAs, and if it's below the threshold, they're going to automatically reject you. So it's really important to do your research in your programs. So for me, I wanted to stay as close to home as possible. So I was looking at programs around Arizona. There's a few here in Arizona. I looked through all of them, and some of the programs required certain courses, very specific courses that have never took. So I wasn't planning on spending X amount of money just taking this one course that only 1 out of 8 of my schools required. So I just pretty much looked into to see what program or what courses I took and if they met the requirements for that specific program. So making sure that you meet the requirements is the biggest thing for sure. And then obviously you want to research more about the program. If it's a brand new program, you kind of want to be a little bit cautious, because if it's brand new, like, they don't have that history of being a really good program. It could potentially be a great program, but there's no history behind it. So it's kind of like if you go and then they lose your accreditation, like, that's scary. So you want to make sure that the programs you apply to are reputable, that they have a long track record of having good passing scores. You don't want to go to a program that only half the class passes, because that program probably going to get shut down. So you want to apply to programs that have a good strong track record. Because if you go to school, you want to make sure that they prepare you well to take the national boards. And if a program doesn't do that, then you probably try to stay away if it were possible.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I have a direct message question, and then I see there's another in the chat. The one that I got is, how valuable would you say that research was towards your application, like research lab hours?
It was pretty cool. So for me, my research hours prior to working at Spark was a little low. I think 100 hours in, I think, a cardio lab back in the day. I don't remember, it was a long time ago. But it helps, if you're deficient on somewhere else. Let's say your GPA is kind of like near the low end potentially. Having kind of making up for that in a different category definitely helps to kind of even it out. So I'll say it's not research doesn't make or break, but it can definitely help for sure. And especially like if you want to do a certain type of research, let's say like you definitely know for sure you want to work in orthopedic stuff like that. And if you have research in undergrad or like post undergrad about like doing like research in orthopedics, sports medicine, something like that, will definitely help you in the future when you're applying to jobs as a PA, that you have research, that you have abstracts submitted working in that specialty. So it makes you a little bit better candidate to be hired to potentially.
Great. Our next question is, what were the ways you received patient care hours? Did attaining those help guide you in what you wanted to specialize in?
So patient care hours is important to any pre-PA student. So you want, instead of patient care, I do direct patient care, because patient care hours can mean a lot of things, but you want direct patient care hours. So direct patient care hours would mean working one-on-one with patients, or actually working with patients. Being a scribe is a very good experience. I learned a lot about different, disease processes. I learned about important lab work. So let's say I see somebody, like a patient I saw had a UTI. I knew exactly what labs we would order before, we came to sit down. Like I knew like the patient had, heart, chest pain, I knew to throw on troponin, stuff like that. So like you learn very cool skills like that, like clinical skills like that, working as a scribe. But as a scribe, you're very limited into what you can do. You're pretty much there to dictate and assist the physician, the provider, with their charting stuff, which is pretty cool because you learn a little bit more about how the hospital works and stuff like that. But like it was when I started to work as PT tech, ophthalmology, pain, and here at Spark, where I learned one-on-one. It was it's a little bit more valuable because the quality of that experience is a little bit valuable. You actually work with patients, and then that's a big thing. Building your patient provider or patient person, communication skills, learning how to talk with people is really important. Learning how to diffuse tense situations, very important. So I will say when looking for jobs or looking for positions to kind of gain these patient care experiences, really read the roles and responsibilities of whatever position you're looking for. If it's working with patients or working with people one-on-one or working with multiple people, I would strongly suggest those over being a scribe. But I mean, I've known people that had 4.0 GPAs and only did like 500 hours of scribing and they got in. But it really depends. You really have to figure out for yourself where you're where you're kind of lacking a little bit. Because everybody always, nobody has in my opinion, no one has a perfect application. So there's always things you could improve on, but it's up to whoever you are to kind of figure out where you need to improve. If you have a 4.0 GPA, you probably don't, you could probably get by being a scribe. Or if you're more on the lower end, maybe getting a higher quality paid, clinical position would be better. The cool thing about Spark is that we offer undergrads direct patient care experience. It's a little shameless plug, but yeah, here at Spark, we have a clinical internship where you get to work one-on-one with patients. So a lot of people here applied because they want direct patient care experience. So Gigi, I think, started here as an intern. She's a tech now, but she's pre-PA, so she definitely gained quite a bit of hours as an intern, and then she's going to gain more now as a tech and a little bit more as well. So yeah, so I will say definitely try to go for direct patient care hours if possible to really help you guys. Is my 2 cents.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil. Just a quick promo for all of you guys. I put a link in the chat to the internships at Spark. They're now open for the spring, and this is direct patient care experience. So if you are looking for an opportunity to do that, I highly, highly recommend that you apply. All the information is on the website. And of course, if you have any questions at all, you can always reach out to me. You could reach out to Neil. But yeah, it's just a great way to gain patient care experience. So definitely recommend checking that out. And I'll also include that in the recap email announcements. But going back to the chat, we had another question that said, if you got accepted into multiple PA schools, what made you choose the one that you were going to?
Very good question. So for me, I was fortunate enough. I have multiple. I have 2. I mean, I guess I got A or B options. I know some people that had multiple options, which is like good for them. But for me, I decided to do what was more cost effective. And what was obviously my first choice was to be as close to home as possible because I just wanted to save a lot of money if possible. Because PA school is expensive. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's pretty expensive because you can't really work and you're gonna be living off loans for God knows how long. And luckily for me, where I work, some of the docs I work with, I asked them, and they're like, Neil, like try to do something that you could like afford and is very cheap. Because some of them tell me they're paying off loans still. So I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So I definitely, cost is one thing. And you also want to make sure that if you get accepted to 2 programs, you want to apply to the program or you want to accept the program that has a better track record. So let's say you got into like a really established program and you got into the brand new program. I would rather go to the established program personally because they're established, they have a good track record, you have previous data on other cohorts that passed, their PANCE scores, how many people dropped out, how many people passed, stuff like that. So I definitely would look at that. And I would also look at to see what their rotations their rotation schedules like. Some programs for their rotations for the second year have like these specific, like a handful of specific sites that they'll rotate their students to, and they're established so that those sites will accept your students, while other schools, like it's on the student to find sites, which could be kind of troublesome because you have to reach out to clinics, stuff like that. So some schools have established sites, while other schools, like, you're kind of like find your own sites, you know. So definitely want to make sure that you uh, to make it easier on you in the future, you definitely want to go to those programs that have like designated established sites that you'll do your rotations at, versus rather than you like kind of cold call a bunch of places, you know, trying to figure out where you want to go, and if you can even get in. So yeah, doing that. And then obviously for rotations, not every program will have an even number of rotations. So some programs just do the core seven, you know, they do emergency medicine, internal medicine, OBGYN, those core groups, while other programs have elective rotations where you could do electives in anything you want. So if you're really interested in doing a certain elective that isn't a core rotation and you really want to do it, and one program allows you to do it, another program doesn't, you probably want to choose one that allows you to do that. So you really want to see what you're interested in. So that could kind of help lead you towards which program you want to go towards as well. But there's a lot of things, if you have a spouse or if you have kids, you don't want to go too far. You want to be kind of close. Well, other people, they want to travel across the country because they won't know when the next time they're going to be able to travel for like during school and stuff like that. So some people want to like travel to others, further away schools that offer like interstate travel for their rotations because they just want to travel. That's cool for them. So it really depends on the person, I'll say. But there's a lot of factors that involve around like choosing which program.
Awesome. Thank you. Our next question is, do a lot of direct patient care hour jobs require some type of credentials, additional school beforehand, like CNA?
Some do, some don't. So a few of the techs, Toby here, he had to go back to Phoenix after he graduated. He actually is working as an MA in Phoenix. He doesn't have an MA certificate, but they hired him. So there are jobs out there. There's MA jobs, stuff like that will hire people and train people. And there's also other positions, or there's also other organizations that will bring you on untrained or uncertified, and then they'll have like a 4 or 5 month probationary period where they'll train you, and then they'll like get you ready to take the actual like the boards for that. So like then they'll pay for you to take the MA certification, and then you'll be certified, stuff like that. So there are jobs out there that require little to no like certification. You just have to kind of do your research, and you have to like just dig the web.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Neil?
I'm an open book. Any questions you have, I'll give you the honor.
Yeah. Well, okay, we got one. Did you earn majority of your patient care hours during undergrad or during summers?
Most of mine came after I graduated. So the summer after I graduated, and then the gap years after that. Unlike you guys, probably, I was kind of more focused on my schoolwork and stuff like that. So I was too busy, and I told myself that I wasn't going to apply directly after. Some people, if you guys want to streamline your like this whole process and go right after undergrad, I would suggest start looking at positions while you're in undergrad, like during winter break, during summer, or even during your semesters if you have like time, like a couple hours here and there in your schedules, if you want to do that. But for other people, they want to spend a year actually gaining more patient care hours. So it really depends. But for me personally, mine was after I graduated. But there's no right answer. People could do it during, people could do it after. It really depends on the person.
Our next question is, what PA school did you get accepted to?
Okay, so I got accepted to 3. So I got into Duke, which was a good one. I turned Duke down actually. So these guys out here give me kind of crap for that because they're like, damn, you turned out Duke. The reason I turned it down was because I got into AT Still, and I was able to get scholarships. So I pretty much have my tuition covered for that. So that's why I decided to do that. And then I got to both AT Still campuses, one in California and then one here. So I decided to do that. Yeah, sorry, these questions keep popping up, so I got kind of.
No, you're good. Our next question is, did you use any of the pre-PA services that are offered online, personal statement helper, things like that?
I personally did not. I don't really see the need for that, in my opinion. If you're completely lost and you have no idea where you're starting, stuff like that, I'm sure there's a lot of free resources out there. If I was a freshman, I had no idea what CASPA was. I had no idea of anything. My first thing would probably be to shadow a PA. If you shadow a PA, then you could use them as like your mentor, and they can kind of teach you like how to do everything. And they'll kind of like, they'll be there. Obviously, they can help you write a letter, right? But they'll also guide you on what things they wish they knew better or what they knew before. So I would do that rather than paying some random guy, X amount of dollars to tell you what to do, to do something that somebody could tell you for free potentially. But if you really have that extra cash lying around and you just want to be really on top of it, by all means you can go for it. But it's totally up to the person.
Our next question is, how did you decide that you wanted to become a PA?
Good question. So that's also a question some programs like to ask. I actually had that asked for me too. So for me, it started back in high school, junior year specifically. Up until that point, I did not know what a PA was. I had no idea what the PA profession was. At that point, my healthcare insight was very black and white. It was either you're a doctor, you're a nurse, or a pharmacist, but that was about it. So it was after a high school soccer knee injury where I tore some ligaments in my knee, where I had to go see an orthopedic specialist. And when I went into the clinic, I saw, actually know the Mr. Trimble, who was the PA that I actually saw all those years ago. He was very memorable. That's how I remember his name. But he kind of went over my, he was very nice. He told me where I hurt myself. He actually took some paper towel from the wall dispenser, drew the anatomy of my knee, and showed me exactly where I hurt myself to really help me get a visualization of where I was hurt. And at that point, I was on the varsity team and for soccer, and like emotionally, I was kind of crushed because I made the team. I hurt myself, so mentally I wasn't doing so hot. So he understood it as an athlete himself. So he was telling me like, yeah, man, it's kind of a little bit of a setback. But he says that like, you'll be really good. He's pretty much told me like I'm in good hands with him and the surgeon that did my surgery. And then after the surgery was done by the surgeon, all my follow-up and stuff like that was with the PA who did more other imaging, just making sure that my recovery process was on the right track. And that really opened my eyes to the PA profession. And that allowed me to dig in a little bit more deeper about the PA profession and kind of made me realize, all right, this is what I could potentially want to do. And then I did more shadowing, and that really helped solidify my goal.
Our next question is, did some schools offer you scholarships, or did you have to apply for them after you got in?
So some schools so scholarships are only for students that already got in. Certain programs, so there are federal grants and stuff like that like are loan repayment options. But for all of those, you have to already be accepted to a program in order for that to work. Because once you're in, they know that you're in. So as a pre-PA, it doesn't really help to apply for these things because you're not in a program, so they're not going to really give it to you versus somebody that's already in. So a couple of the PA students that rotated here in our clinic, they did a federal loan forgiveness grant where the government will pay their student loans for, I think it was like 4 or 5 years of working in a community health center or working in family medicine or internal medicine in like kind of a rural area, because as PAs, you're pretty much a general practitioner. So the key role for PAs is they want PAs to work primarily in primary care. So these loan repayment grants, that caveat of those is that you have to spend like 4 or 5 years working in family medicine clinics or kind of like these rural areas, which a lot of people are open to, which is kind of great. If you really want to give back to the community like that, you really can. For me, I saw a lot of my care growing up in a community health center. So when I do work or when I do rotate, do stuff in these clinics, it's really, for me, it's like full circle, which I'm really looking forward to. Kind of once I was a patient at these places, now I'm actually more of a provider at these places. So some of these grants do require some kind of sacrifice on your end. If you really wanted to, work in dermatology, but you did this like loan forgiveness, you have to spend a few years working where they ask pretty much. But after that, you're good to do whatever you want.
And then our last question as of now is, were you or anyone you know a hometown scholar for AT still?
I was actually, so I did it. So Yeah, so that's a cool thing. Again, work because it talks about community health centers and stuff like that. So I was a hometown scholar. I feel like that might have helped my application a little bit too, maybe. I don't know. But I showed interest in, like, staying in Arizona. I showed my interest. I showed them examples of where I've worked in rural medicine, worked in, like, free clinics, stuff like that. Really showed them my track record, really showed them that I was really passionate about kind of serving the underserved. So if you're somebody like that, then definitely I would suggest trying to do that hometown scholar thing, because it just helps build your application a little bit more. It really puts like a little bit more substance in your application, which other people might not have. So it's really, if it's applicable to you, I would say go for it. And more information about that's going to be on the website on AT still. I don't know, I forgot every little thing, but there's like contact information stuff on there. So yeah, feel free to check the website out, and then if you have any like specific questions, I'll give Gigi my email and you guys can email me.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Does anyone else have any last minute questions? Okay, cool. Do you think being a hometown scholar, having other good stats like GPA, PCE, volunteering, etc., will be good if your personal statement isn't as strong as you think it could be?
Ooh, I will say that if you have really good stats, if you have wait, sorry, let me read this real quick before I make an idiot of myself. I didn't read it correctly. Okay. So yeah, honestly, if you have really good stats, if you have really good patient care experience, a lot of volunteering, you could definitely write a really good personal statement, because you could use memories and recall stuff that you did in your patient care experience and your volunteering that really solidified why you wanted to be a PA. So if you have really good patient care hours and a lot of like volunteering experiences, you could easily crank through a really, really, really personal, really strong personal statement, I'd say. I'll say on the opposite, if you have very limited hours and very limited volunteering, then it's going to be hard for you to write a good personal statement, in my opinion.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? We can give like a minute and then I'll just do the wrap up announcements. But yeah. Okay, well, if you want to, you can butt in while I'm talking, but thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you, Neil, for speaking to the club. I found it pretty helpful and I hope you all did as well.
Well, I was once in their
And
shoes anyway. Sorry, I didn't mean to, but I was like, because
yeah,
I remember when I was in the pre-PA club, we had like a bunch of speakers too, and I was like one of you guys, but now I'm on the other end, which kind of it's a little cool, I'd say.
yeah, it's awesome. And for next time, we will be having an admissions counselor from the University of Southern California. And our meeting will be on, I'm just double checking my calendar to make sure I don't lie to you guys, on December 6th. So have a great Thanksgiving. Happy holidays. I'll see you all on December 6th. Okay. Cool.
I think we're just saying thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you.